I just want to start off by saying Hoyoverse, you fucks. I can no longer make fun of Keqing for being 1/4 of a unit because she's actually quite good now with Dendro, which is just... Anyways, back to the video. Hello there, Flip here, and today we're going to be talking about Cyno because... Well, I want to start off by talking about Cyno and why he just isn't that great at doing anything really. And then I want to open the discussion as a whole if 5-star characters even need to be good in the first place. Besides Nahida, who should be released by the time this video comes out, we haven't really had a meta-defining character in a while, and currently, we have Cyno, who is kind of just bad, and Nilo, who is certainly a Hydro character in Genshin, who changes the way Bloom works and allows blooms to truly be one of... I might make a whole video on her too. But before we move on to Cyno, as always, if at any point during the video you're entertained or informed, make sure to drop a like and even consider subscribing, as I talk about various topics on Genshin's meta, and I'll try to keep you informed while clearing up some misconceptions. Speaking of misconceptions, before talking about Cyno's issues, I kind of want to clear up something I think people are misunderstanding about Cyno. I don't necessarily think Cyno is supposed to just be an aggravate character. Of course that's going to be one of his best teams, but not in the way the community is pigeonholing him into it. I think Cyno is also supposed to enable the other Dendro and Electro reaction, Hyper Bloom, because some things in his kit point to him being able to do that effectively. His Electro attacks have a big enough AoE to guarantee hitting any seeds close to him, which is what a Hyper Bloom team really appreciates. And because it's also a single target focused reaction, it also helps him where he primarily struggles in single target. So if you want Cyno to be good in AoE, play his Aggravate team, and if you want him to be good in single target, you can play his Hyper Bloom teams. Or you could also just combine both of them for a Quick Bloom team. Since the Quicken Aura acts exactly like a Dendro Aura, it needs 2 Hydra applications to completely deplete the aura. And if your Hydra application is slow enough with a character like Kokomi and even Yelan, if you can just quickly reapply Quicken after it gets swallowed by the Hydra Aura, then you can proc a lot of Hyper Blooms and get a lot of Aggravates with Cyno simultaneously. And with the mindfuck of colors being shit out, it's honestly just the most fun Cyno team to play in my opinion. And if you disagree, you are simply just wrong, unfortunately. And I do find it funny because a lot of people are calling Cyno a downgraded Keqing because her Aggravate teams perform better with less issues. But because Keqing doesn't do that well in Hyper Bloom, it's disingenuous to call Cyno a Keqing downgrade. He's a Raiden downgrade because holy shit, full elemental mastery Raiden Hyper Bloom is illegally good. I had to try it on stream after a lot of convincing, and it pisses me off that this is actually a good team. And then Raiden Aggravate is also really good, which I expected, having amazing single target from Fischl and Raiden's AoE. So yeah, Raiden kind of just shits on Cyno while having a shorter damage window, giving an energy recharge bonus and an elemental burst damage bonus. Now with his issues, his most notable one is going to be Zhao Syndrome. And for those of you who don't know what Zhao Syndrome is, it's basically when a character just has a high field time requirement to where the tail end of their uptime is unbuffed by supports. Again, looking at Zhao as the example, if Zhao was to use a character like Fischl, even assuming you cast Oz right before you go pole dancing with Zhao, Oz will only be active for 12 seconds of Zhao's uptime. And this isn't to say that Zhao and Fischl is bad together because they aren't. But this is obviously going to be an issue because most of the good supports and off-field damage dealers in Genshin will barely last longer than 12 seconds. Which is why even though someone like Gunyu can stay on field for a ridiculous amount of time, why would you ever do that over recasting your support's abilities and restarting your rotation? Cyno, when going into his burst form, can stay on field for up to around 20 seconds, and the thing is that you can't even just say switch out because with Cyno, he actually generates a lot of particles in his burst form from the constant skills you do, so switching out early results in less energy generated, meaning you would have to build more energy on him and his supports. There are very few characters that can actually last long enough to support Cyno and provide damage for him off field fully, so he just ends up feeling very awkward to play. Another thing is that because of Cyno's end-tier stance bullshit, it actually makes him quite punishing to play, as missing his skill neuters your damage and your AoE by quite a lot. There are some common variables that can cause you to miss your boosted skill that I'll put up on screen, but a lot of them can actually be mitigated by using a shielder, but using a shielder also happens to fuck up your damage too, so it has to be a trade-off you're willing to go through with. I really hate this mechanic though, as it just makes Cyno punishing for no real reason, on top of his damage currently not being anything to really strike home at anyways, so just adding this barrier makes no sense. Especially since he also has no interrupt resistance in his kit as well, making a noodle knock him down as well, which also matches his arms perfectly. And just rip Bozo to all the people playing Thundering Fury, as this actually makes his window even tighter for each skill. So have fun. Cyno just ends up being a character that is very mediocre in single target and good in AoE, but hard to play in AoE because he just beats the enemies away from him, on top of his aggravate teams getting outshone by Beidou, Keqing, Raiden and Yai, and his Hyper Bloom teams being outshone by Raiden. So like, what is Cyno really meant to do? Which then also brings me to the discussion of if 5 stars need to be strong in the first place. Because Cyno, a character that has been planned since the launch of Genshin, ended up being very mediocre. I actually intended to have this video done way earlier, but the bombshell that was the Hoyoverse interview dropped, which although didn't fully change my mind, still made a lot more variables be considered. Now, to answer the question of if characters have to be strong, first we have to take into consideration what strength means, and actually why does a limited character have to be strong in the first place. Strength in Genshin, or normally referred to as the meta, is basically what teams in Genshin will net you a Spiral Abyss clear with the lowest amount of investment. And this does typically vary from Abyss to Abyss. In 1.0, Venti was actually considered to be the strongest character in the game at the time, because Abyss was a lot of weak mobbing enemies that Venti could easily group up and kill with relatively low investment. Hell, you didn't even really need Venti's damage, just his grouping capabilities alone would make Abyss chambers get cleared so fast that your other side would have so much time to clear, so they would not need that much investment either. That made Venti a staple of the Genshin 1.0 meta. Now, even though Venti isn't as dominant in Abyss as he once was, he has sort of found a balance in still being a strong character but not so overpowered to where not picking him up is a detriment. This is also the same reason why freeze teams are so dominant, because enemies being able to stay grouped and get hit by all your damage while also having multiple crit rate buffs means that the investment needed is also going to be lower, as there won't be many cases where a target isn't getting hit by all your damage. For example, I hate to bring her up all the time, but with Yoimiya, outside of single targets, she will have to do more damage to each enemy as she can't hit all of them at the same time, whereas a freeze team just hits all of them regardless. So that answers our first question. Strength of a character is how good they are in the meta, and the meta is how good teams and characters clear with what amount of investment. And now that we've determined what strength is, why? Why do characters have to be strong? Since meta is purely defined by the Spiral Abyss, and to be honest, any 2 strong medium invested teams will be able to clear if they use proper rotations and don't have skill issues, and Abyss is completely optional. So is there really a reason to warrant a character being strong? I know we've been shitting on Cyno because Keqing, a standard banner character, who wasn't even made with aggravate in mind, has better aggravate teams than him. But at the same time, if you just invest more into Cyno and his teams, you will eventually be able to clear, right? Even Chi-Chi can get carried by 3 strong teammates and be able to clear. And unlike before where Abyss difficulty continuously ramped up, it has sort of now plateaued off, and there is no harder content required in the future anyways, so again, what is the point of a character being strong? If you want to clear Abyss, then you can just pull the stronger characters and clear with them, and then eventually with enough investment you can pull whoever you like. Build a strong team for them and then eventually clear. But I do think that argument lacks a bit of nuance. For me, there are 2 sides. I do understand the notion of characters not even needing to be strong, but first, these are limited gacha characters. Even if you were to save 100 wishes for Cyno, there is actually no guarantee that you'd get a copy of him. And that is going to make you feel like shit. I remember pulling for Eula and I got a Diluc and I wanted to die until luckily I got the Queen 2 pulls later. And now imagine you have saved this much for a character, you have spent your time pre-farming them, and then you get Cyno. Cyno is fun to play, but it is evident from a lot of responses that even though there is no logical reason to care about power level, it still is emotionally a factor. Character strength and sales do also have a little tie-in, as characters who have gotten weaker tend to lose sales, even though Genshin is always increasing in players. And characters who are seen weak at first increase in sales after they get stronger. And on the note of sales, money, these limited characters cost money and can actually cause people to spend if they don't have enough saved. I do agree spending money on Genshin probably isn't the smartest decision you can do with your money. But at the same time, it's an undeniable truth that people will spend a lot of money pulling for some characters. And not only could this money be better spent, but at the same time they are inadvertently just buying a worse product. One thing that Mtashed says, which I do agree with, is that every character in Genshin costs the same. The same amount of money and primos someone will put into getting Cyno is the exact same amount they could have pulled for getting Raiden. So why are these characters costing the exact same amount even though they are getting weaker and less effective? Even though rationally it really shouldn't matter if a character is strong or not, as humans we still do want characters we have to be strong. I genuinely can't imagine how a Cyno simp would feel knowing that someone like Keqing is performing better than him currently. They are not lasting a single second in any group chat with that. And I have actually talked to a lot of people in the Genshin community and in my comments, and a character being weak does actually hammer their enjoyment of said character, which again I don't think is a good thing. You can very easily argue there is no point to characters being strong as there is no content where it matters, but at the same time if there's no content where it does matter, just let characters be strong. And this isn't even asking characters to significantly outperform characters. No one wants Cyno to outdamage a C2 Raiden, but at least keeping Cyno in line with other C0 characters makes a lot more sense. And actually it's not even that characters are ending up with lower numbers, it's just that they have more issues. Cyno having an upwards of 18-second fuel time requirement, as well as its end tiers being quite punishing, is just something that doesn't need to exist at all. Whose genius decision is it that Nilo's main mechanic will only work with Denjo and Hydro? Please tell me. And I know they aren't 5 stars, but why the fuck were Kole and Yori just given special ICDs to limit how much elemental application they can apply, limiting how strong they are? And now the last thing I can really talk about is longevity, and if what Hoyo is doing is going to be sustainable. At least for me, seeing how the direction of the game is going in, and from what I've heard from the community, I think that Hoyo releasing weaker characters isn't necessarily going to kill interest in the game, but it will kill interest in future characters. What Hoyo probably plans to do is to just end up releasing mediocre or niche characters, then eventually just release a diamond in the rough character that outshines its other predecessors, instead of how they used to release characters that were consistently good in 1.0. Another thing they are probably doing is banking on characters just being liked. One of Cyno's problems is that he doesn't currently have strong synergistic teammates that can buff his uptime. But what? Would you look at that? Nahida exists who just coincidentally has a skill that will last long enough for his uptime. So now if you want to use Cyno to his fullest potential that also involves pulling for a Nahida, same case with Nilo, they are giving these characters these micro problems and then the only solution is lol, just pull more characters that can fix it. Please do not do Deya this dirty. I love her. The model Hoyo is going for avoids power creep to an extent, but whether or not it is sustainable and the community is happy with it is another thing. We'll just have to wait and see how it plays out. And on that note, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe and comment your thoughts about characters getting weaker, as I would love to hear them and I respond to almost every single comment. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.
Stay with me, little bitch, yeah, you know that I'm no man. You be capping like a snitch, no thoughts, no stand, 2 hoes, 10 toes, new guac on the bed.